Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing great. And as always, we're back with another video and topic of discussion for all of my athletes or whoever is interested in understanding how the mind of an athlete works. We have a bit of a different background, but I'm just trying something different, so bear with me and let me know what you think. Today, we'll be talking about why it's so hard for athletes to take breaks. Now, obviously, we're very focused on going all the time. We look forward to training, we look forward to competing, but I feel like a lot of us don't look forward to resting the way we should. Even when we rest, we don't rest as hard as we train. It's important because taking breaks are essential to rest, reset, and even come back stronger. Like I previously mentioned, rest and work go hand in hand. One cannot be done best without both, coming together. And it's essential for us to know when to work hard and when to rest hard as well. The first issue is believing that you will lose your progress when you rest. And what I mean by that is the harder you hold onto your trainings, the quicker you will burn out. The quicker you will lose motivation for your sport. And a lot of us don't understand how important it is to rest fully when we have the opportunity to rest fully. Now, this obviously applies to our normal rest time during the week. Maybe you have 1 or 2 rest days on the weekend, and you might not rest as much because maybe you want to have a kickabout with your friends, which is absolutely fine. I wouldn't consider that as training. That's fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's times where we all have that need to even do something, right? And that little something might not affect your physical recovery as much, but it can affect your mental recovery. We need to understand that when we rest, we don't just rest our bodies, we also rest our minds, right? And for another specific situation, rest can be overlooked when things are not going well, right? When we want to progress, when we feel like things are not going well, the first thing a lot of us think about is doing more. The issue here is not with what we're doing, but by the little amount of time we take to analyze everything before acting, right? Instead of just looking at, I need to do more to do better, you need to look at everything. There's maybe something you're not doing enough of, there's maybe things that you need to change, or you simply need to rest. And we don't look at all these things before we act in these situations. Second issue is confusing pushing yourself and running yourself to the ground. Again, this comes back to what I just said. This is more of an inner struggle that we have. This is more perception than anything. But yeah, the issue here is having the wrong mindset and adopting an unsustainable approach to how we train, how we rest, and also how we want to move forward. How do you want to rest if you're always doing something or if you're always moving? I understand the logic of active recovery, for example. That's great, but don't you believe that to come back with a clear mind and with a body that's at 100%, that you can have days where you just don't do any form of training, even when it comes to mobility, stretching, and things like that. If you want to be fully rested, why don't you have days where you're fully off? And most of the times, Again, we expect different things, but we just do the same thing. Maybe you're recovering from an injury, and again, you believe that getting more rehab in will help you. This is something I've personally experienced. You know, you're doing the right things when you believe you're doing the right things, but things either get worse or they don't change at all. So if that same approach is clearly not working, then something has to give. And in this case, what has to give is that non-stop grind, that belief that you always have to do something. Maybe doing nothing is the best thing to do in that situation. I think I already touched upon the first way to deal with that, but the second way to deal with this is to stop rushing what we want to get and where we want to be. This constant feeling of, I need to get there at this time, or I need to be able to do this at this time, or at a specific date or specific deadline you set for yourself. You need to move according to where you are. If you're attaching yourself to things and not moving based on your body, your mind, where you are, there will always be a misalignment. There will always be a shift in between what your body can do, what your mind can do, and the place that you're aiming for, the thing that you're working towards. And that shift, that misalignment, is exactly where a lot of us find ourselves not resting when we're meant to rest. Rather than letting external factors set the pace, let's set the pace based on where we are, based on how our mind feels. Right? And again, I'm not trying to confuse, emotions and following the plan, like I mentioned in the past video, but when I talk about the pace of the plan, the pace of you moving forward, you move forward with your body and mind, and you need to respect it. You need to show your mind and your body enough respect to let it, to some extent, dictate how quickly you go where you want to go. That's the difference. It doesn't always dictate where you want to go, but sometimes you need to let your mind and your body dictate how quickly you can get there. You don't need to rush everything you do. And adopting that mindset makes it easier to accept resting. Whether it's, again, your weekly rest days or your lengthier rest periods, right? Because I'm sure that a lot of us, have different schedules, different programs, whether it's team sports, team training and individual training. Me, for example, I've tried many different training styles, 6 weeks on, 1 week off, 8 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 10 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Whatever you try, whatever you're doing, having that mindset makes it easier to approach your rest. It makes it easier to know that this time off shouldn't be a time where you stress about losing your gains. It should be a time where you're just focusing on your recovery. First of all, you will not lose all your progress. That's completely false. And second of all, you will be rested. You will have time to enjoy other things in your life, and you will come back better. Hope you learned something from this. I sure did. Catch you guys next time.